Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of 1 Minute Breakdowns, where we break down each and every fight on this upcoming UFC card, which is UFC 291, in a minute or less, or at least we try to. If you guys haven't already, please like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know for each matchup what your prediction is for the fight, what you're betting, and what you're excited to see most this Saturday. Shout out to Jacob being the first one here in the chat. Appreciate you, my guy. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get this started. So first fight of the night, we have Miranda Maverick going up against Priscilla Cachoeira. Miranda Maverick is going to be the younger fighter by 8 years and is going to be at a 4-inch height disadvantage. And both fighters will have pretty much the same reach. Miranda Maverick just came off of a really bad loss against Jasmine Jasovicius, a girl that is much bigger than her and more physical than her at UFC Vancouver. But in this matchup, she'll find herself at a big advantage against Priscilla Cachoeira, who just cannot seem to get the grappling going and is pretty weak when it comes to the ground game. We've seen her struggle when she gets taken down to the mat in multiple fights in the UFC, and I just expect the same thing here from Maverick. So I think Maverick takes Cachoeira down and likely submits her here, probably first or second round. So under 2.5 is a pretty decent bet here at minus 115. But yeah, give me Miranda Maverick here by submission. My bad. That was on mute. There we go. So next up, we have Matthew Semmelsberger going up against Eros Medich. Matthew Semmelsberger, both fighters are going to be at 6'1", so both same height. And Semmelsberger is going to have a 4-inch reach advantage here. So Eros Medich is making his first fight here at welterweight. He's moving up on short notice against Semmelsberger here to fill in, and I think this is going to be trouble. Eros Medich is a guy that has not seen the UFC cage past the 2-minute and 30-second mark of round number 2, so as all his fights have ended under 1.5 rounds. And in this fight against Matthew Semmelsberger, a much more natural 170 welterweight, I think he's going to face trouble when it comes to Semmelsberger's power, but more than anything, it's going to be the wrestling and the grappling, because Eros Medich has shown that he's not the best when it comes to the wrestling and grappling department. I think Matthew Semmelsberger's easiest path to victory here is going to be the wrestling and grappling, winning those control time positions, zapping the cardio out of Eros Medich, who is, like I said, coming in on short notice. And whether it's a submission or a knockout, I think Matthew Semmelsberger gets this done inside the distance. Next up, we have CJ Vergara going up against Vinicius Salvador. CJ Vergara is going to be 1 inch shorter. He's going to be at a 2.5-inch reach disadvantage, and he'll be the older fighter by 5 years. CJ Vergara is the type of fighter that I can expect to go for the wrestling in this matchup and the grappling. Vinicius Salvador, I was somewhat high on when he first came into the UFC off of the Contender Series, but I'm starting to grow to think that more and more it was just Shannon Ross making Vinicius Salvador look so good. After doing the tape on this fight, yeah, Salvador has some power in the hands and Vergara is there to be hit, but on the ground, he doesn't seem to be fully competent. So I think Vergara's grappling is going to be the key here. If he does grapple and wrestle in this matchup, I think he can win minutes and find himself winning a decision here. So, yeah, I think Vergara gets this done by decision personally. I know a lot of people are on Salvador, but I just can't get the thought out of my head of him just looking very good against against Shannon Ross and nobody else. So, yeah, give me CJ Vergara in what looks to be a Twitter war of the week. Next up, we have Jake Matthews going up against Darius Flowers. Darius Flowers is coming in on short notice. For this fight, he's going to be the shorter fighter by 2 inches and will be at a 1-inch reach disadvantage. Both fighters are 28 years old. Jake Matthews should get this done inside the distance. Darius Flowers, I mean, first of all, this is at elevation. So one thing is the cardio of Darius Flowers has never looked really good. And especially coming in on short notice at elevation, it's not going to look any better. And the guy has some decent power. Like, he can crack Jake Matthews, but past the first round, I think Jake Matthews is safe and he's able to win this fight easily. It just he has to get away from the danger in that first round. But yeah, I think Matthews gets this done inside the distance personally. When you guys are handicapping these fights, make sure you keep into mind the elevation factor in Salt Lake City. It is huge. Shout out to my boy Seb. I appreciate you joining in, my guy. It is a sick fight card this weekend, so I'm really excited. I know you are too. Let's get it going and let's break these bookies down. Next up, we have Roman Kopylov going up against Claudia Ribeiro. Roman Kopylov is going to be the older fighter by a year. He's going to be a shorter fighter by 1 inch, and he'll have a 2-inch reach disadvantage in this fight. Another fight where the cardio is going to be in question. So Claudia Ribeiro in his first matchup against Abdulrazak Al-Hassan it could have been UFC jitters, but I just think Ribeiro's cardio in that fight looked horrible. And it's just the way he attacks is full-blown hooks with 100% power. He doesn't really know how to throw any other way. And I think Kopylov can take advantage of the wildness of Ribeiro, keeping him at bay, similar to what he did against Puna Soriano. Just keep the range and attack him from the distance, in a sense, gas him out, and find a finish himself. I think this fight ends inside the distance. I do think it's Kopylov that gets the finish here. Ribeiro is always going to be dangerous, especially in round 1, but especially at elevation here. I don't know how his cardio is going to look. I'm just taking the hint from the Abdulrazak fight and saying that this guy's cardio is not that good, and he won't be able to survive against Kopylov, who I think is going to mix in the wrestling in this fight too. Has been training in Dagestan this camp, so definitely working up the wrestling there. So yeah, Roman Kopylov inside the distance is my prediction here. Next up, we have Derek Lewis going up against Pesao Rogerio de Lima. Derek Lewis and Rogerio de Lima are the same age at 38 years old. Derek Lewis is a taller fighter by 2 inches and will have a 4-inch reach advantage in this fight. Now, Derek Lewis in elevation, de Lima in elevation, both guys don't have good cardio, very subpar, but we both know that these fighters have a ton of power. And the one thing I like about de Lima's game is the leg kicks. I think a couple of those leg kicks, probably 3 to 5 clean leg kicks, and Derek Lewis's leg is all chopped off. And when you don't have a lead leg, you cannot throw with power. That's one thing. When you look at Derek Lewis's past couple of fights, I mean, obviously 3 finishes in a row. He got finished 3 times and just did not look the best, did not look like he wanted to be in the cage. And every time he got touched, he just did not look like he is able to absorb the power anymore coming from these opponents. So Derek Lewis has found himself going under 1.5 in his past couple of losses, which in the UFC, he mainly used to go over 1.5 in a lot of his fights, although he would finish fights, but it would be later. He's been getting into more brawls lately, which I think will favor de Lima here just because of how he's able to take a punch and also the power that de Lima carries. I think it's going to take 1 to 2 of those leg kicks and then a power shot, and he's going to crack the chin of Derek Lewis and win inside the distance. So my prediction here is Rogerio de Lima by finish, probably round 1. And I have a similar prediction for this one. Trevin Giles going up against Gabriel Bonfim. Trevin Giles is going to be the shorter fighter by 1 inch. He's going to be at a 2-inch reach advantage in this fight, and he'll be the older fighter by 5 years. Trevin Giles is just someone that does not seem I'm not going to say competent. Like, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but he just does not know how to mix up the martials all that well. And we've seen him struggle when it comes to the ground game too, which Bonfim is a stud, a bunch of submissions on his record. But I actually think this fight ends in round 1, and I think it's Bonfim that's going to get the KO here. Bonfim has some sneaky power and is a really good boxer. Doesn't tend to throw too many power shots, but is very clean and crisp with his punches. Very technical when it comes to the kicks as well, lining them up with the punches. And he throws in combination. That's one thing I like. He throws in combination. You don't see single shots from Bonfim, which is going to be key against a guy like Giles. It's going to limit his movement. And then also, I just think Giles is a little bit fragile. So I think Bonfim's going to be able to get him out of there inside the distance, probably round 1 by KO. That's my prediction. And next up, we have the first fight of the main card, Kevin Holland going up against Michael Chiesa. Kevin Holland's going to be the younger fighter by 5 years. He's going to be a taller fighter by 2 inches and will have a 6-inch reach advantage here. Kevin Holland is going to be the much more fresh fighter, I want to say, in this fight. Chiesa hasn't fought in quite some time. To be exact, it has been a year and 7 months. We don't know where his mindset is at. And in the grappling, I don't think the grappling difference is any larger than the striking difference here. I think Holland is the much better striker. Chiesa is the better grappler, but not to the same extent. I think on the feet, it's Holland all day. And when it hits the mat, I mean, I do think Holland's length here is going to play a big factor because it is a little bit harder when you're going up against one of these taller, more lengthy guys in the ground game. And for a guy like Chiesa, if he can't wrap up his opponents with his size advantages, his anthropomorphic advantages, then he tends to struggle. Like we saw it against Sean Brady. Sean Brady has like the widest back in MMA. There's a reason why he was able to withstand the pressure from Chiesa. And I think Holland can do the same thing. So I think Holland wins here. It could be in multiple different ways, but I want to say knockout. So give me Kevin Holland. If you guys haven't already, please hit that like button. I appreciate it. And leave a comment. Let me know what your fight of the night is or what you're predicting to be as the banger. I know that main event is very appealing, but let's try to look for a different one. Next up, we have Tony Ferguson going up against Bobby King Green. Tony Ferguson's going to be the older fighter by 3 years. He's going to be the taller fighter by 1 inch and will have a 5.5-inch reach advantage here. Tony Ferguson just looks like he's at the tail end of his career, does not really absorb these punches all that well. And I don't really know what his motivation is anymore here in the lightweight division at 39 years old. It's very tough to see. And on the other hand, you see Bobby Green did not look that well in the first round against Jared Gordon in his last fight. Before that headbutt. So it's like also another area where I don't really know who to root for, but obviously I think Bobby Green is a much fresher fighter. I think he's going to be the striking advantage is going to be towards Bobby Green by a long shot. I think he's the faster striker and more creative. And I just hope this fight doesn't end up going to the mat because I think Tony Ferguson could have like a sneaky decision. A sneaky submission here. Opportunity against Bobby Green, who we really haven't seen too much of on the ground. But all things said, I think Bobby Green ends up winning this matchup. I think he wins inside the distance, but would not be surprised if Ferguson pulls off the upset by submission if he's able to get him down to the mat. You heard it here first. Next up, we got Stephen Wonderboy Thompson going up against Michel Pereira. Thompson's going to be the older fighter by 11 years. He's going to be a shorter fighter by 1 inch and will have a 2-inch reach advantage. Both guys have somewhat of a karate base in this fight. Michel Pereira is a little bit more wild with the capoeira inclusion. And he does have a little bit of wrestling in his back pocket. It's yet to be seen if he's going to be going for the grappling and for the takedowns in this fight. But if Michel Pereira wants to win, it's going to be through the wrestling. And I think there is a chance that we do see that wrestling and takedown attempts come in from Pereira. Because against a guy like Thompson, you do not want to be standing with him. You want to try and take him down. That's the easiest path to victory. The ground game has never really been there for Wonderboy. And I think Pereira has the opportunity to drown him in the grappling and really win 2 out of the 3 rounds here with those takedowns. But if this stays on the feet, I think Thompson is just going to pick Pereira apart and win a 30-27 decision here. But as long as Pereira gets the grappling going, he should win. I'm picking Pereira for this fight. I do think he mixes in the wrestling here. So, yeah, give me Michel Pereira as an underdog. Next up, we have Jan Blachowicz going up against Alex Pereira. Blachowicz is going to be the older fighter by 4 years, the shorter fighter by 2 inches, and will be at a 2-inch reach disadvantage as well. We all know the game plan for both guys here. Alex Pereira wants to keep this thing on the feet and try and knock out Jan Blachowicz, probably the hardest hitter that Jan has ever faced. And then Jan is going to try and take Alex Pereira down. and drown him with the grappling, like he did with Izzy. Similar. But I think the difference between the Izzy fight and this one for Jan is that Izzy weighed in at 193 and didn't really balloon up at all, versus Pereira is not going to weigh in at 193. Pereira is going to weigh in at 205, and then he will balloon back up to 220, 225. So there is a pretty big size difference between Pereira and Adesanya going into the same matchup against Jan. And then also the age at 40 does concern me. But Pereira just coming off of a very brutal knockout loss last time out, which was like 3 months ago. So it's pretty close. I personally am not going to bet on this fight, even though I have a really good read on Pereira fights. I've bet on all of his fights in the UFC and have been on the right side, thankfully, with every single one of them. I do think that Pereira gets the knockout in this fight. I think he negates the wrestling and is a lot more stronger and more physical at 205 than people are expecting. But yeah, I think Pereira knocks out Jan Blachowicz here inside 2 rounds. Last but not least, we have the main event: Dustin Poirier going up against Justin Gaethje. Dustin Poirier is going to be the shorter fighter here by 2 inches, and he's going to have a 3-inch reach advantage. Both fighters are 34. So in this fight, Dustin Poirier is going to have the wrestling advantage. The toughness and grit is probably going to be on the side of Justin Gaethje, along with the speed. The more technical boxer is Dustin Poirier. I just do not like how many wars Justin Gaethje has been in since that last Dustin fight. I think he is going into this fight with a sense of confidence that he won against Fiziev, but Fiziev is not the type of fighter that will bring the war to you. Dustin is. And I think this fight ends inside 3 rounds more likely than not. So under 4.5. I know it's juiced around like minus 170, 180 at the moment, but I think that's a solid look for this fight. You're covering both bases for both fighters, so you're not rooting for anyone specific as long as it goes under 4.5. I do think Dustin Poirier is going to win this fight just with the more technical boxing and just probably the fresher chin, in my opinion. Has been through less wars, although he's still been in his fair share. But I'm siding with Dustin Poirier here. I think he has a little bit more to fight for. So, yeah, give me Dustin Poirier. And ladies and gentlemen, that is the last fight on this card. If you have any questions, feel free to hit my DMs. I appreciate everyone watching the show. It means a lot. And thank you for the support. But until next week, I'll see y'all there.